Shravanam Mananam Nidhidhyasanam. Listen, reflect and absorb. Dear listeners, Sai Ram and welcome to our radio series in which a divine discourse by Bhagawan is played in small parts, and following each part a short discussion is undertaken to reflect on the message. Today's episode was first broadcast live on 17th March 2016. The discourses undertaken for study in this program are from the series of discourses delivered as part of the summer course in Indian Culture and Spirituality, 1991. Have a listen, please.
Offering a most loving pranams at Bhagawan's lotus feet. Dear listeners, we welcome you to this week's episode of Shravanam Mananam Nidhidhyasanam. As always, joining you today is PM and Prakash from Team Radio Sai. Those of you regular listeners to our program will be aware that we go through Swami's Discourses in this program. This is season 2. We've gone through 1990 summer course the last time around. This time we're going through the 1991 summer course series. We're in the second discourse. We will be completing the second discourse today, hopefully. And as always, every discourse of Swami is a gem which is worth revisiting as many times as we possibly can. This particular discourse is really an eye-opener to both of us. Wonderfully structured discourse, beautiful insights all through the discourse. It's really left us wondering how beautiful this discourse is and how we missed it for so long. But never, better late than never, as they say. But before we go into the discourse, we're going to have 2 more clips to complete. I invite Sai Prakash to join all of us. Sai Ram, Sai Prakash.
Sai Ram Prem and Sai Ram, dear listeners. Yes, this has been a phenomenal discourse. The sheer variety of topics that Swami has touched on in this discourse is amazing. As we said earlier in our earlier episodes, Swami has literally traced the evolution of human thought, as I would put it, because very beautifully it starts off with the way man observes and learns from nature, but then very quickly it comes on to how man pursued the study of nature in a spirit of inquiry, and how Swami at that point distinguishes the approach the sages took and the approach that the scientists are taking today.
Most of the time, what is important is when you go about solving an equation, solving anything, whether it's in mathematics or physics,
right,
there are some things which they fix as constants. They say that these things don't change, and these can be points around which the entire solution can be placed.
Right.
And there are also some things which are accepted that these can't be solved. These
Correct.
Can't be known. Let's just
Correct.
keep them as unknown. Many times it's very interesting to see how we can really come to a solution in spite of not knowing some of those aspects.
Right.
And in the last week's discourse, we came across some things which Swami said about that. Swami said, the mystery of birth and death is never known. You can describe that state of death, you can describe that process of birth, but you never know. And Swami said, the sages declared that you cannot decide when a person will die. You cannot declare that how long a person will live. At the same time, you have no idea whether the person will be reborn after that birth.
Right.
And that amount of invariable nature in what they were exploring was kind of understood.
In a way, we can say the sages knew where to draw the line, because in the pursuit of exploration, the sages knew this is the extent to which we can analyze and understand and comprehend.
Right.
And beyond such a stage, you have to just accept and leave it to God's will. So, on the other hand, as Swami rightly said, that scientists, they have this sense of achievement, and they have this sense of pride, if I may say, that they have discovered a lot of new things.
Right.
But on the other hand, we had the sages who approached the same issue with a lot of humility.
I was just, when Swami was talking about this uncertainty in life, and how that actually played on the minds of these sages. In many ways, that was also the cause for the humility. When you're spacing out your understanding, when you're spacing out your exploration, you know that at any time there could be an abrupt end to it. There is a sense of awe throughout, even when you didn't know there was awe. Even when you've come to know so much, there is awe. Because in spite of all your exploration, the amount of certainty that, you can say that I will live for this many years is so limited.
Yes.
The typical example it occurred to me was, let's say there's a cricket match. Okay, there's a 50 overs cricket match. That's a limited match. So a team which goes to bat, or the team which is batting first,
yes,
it will plan its innings.
Right.
So they'll say, okay, till these many overs we'll play a little silently, and then we'll be aggressive.
Correct.
Or we can afford to lose these many wickets. You can plan.
Yes.
But the same match, let's say it's an overcast condition.
Correct.
You have no idea when the rain is going to come and disrupt.
Right.
And you have this idea called the Duckworth-Lewis system in cricket matches.
Yes.
Depending on what your score is at that point when the match is stopped.
Correct.
Or when the rain comes down, or how many wickets you've lost. That's what decides, how much you're actually chasing or how much you're going to put forth as a target. That changes the entire game play.
Exactly.
There is so much of uncertainty. The way the batsmen approach the situation is completely different. They, they have to be cautious at the same time. They're aggressive also.
Score, right.
I think it's the same thing with life also. When this idea comes that any time there could be an abrupt end to your journey, how will you approach life?
Very true. In fact, just looking at it the other way, the approach of the sages is absolutely scientific.
Right.
Because in a scientific pursuit, you're open. You're very objective about things, about events, and you have to take into account all the factors. If you look at it that way, the sages had the humility to accept that there are events and there are things that happen in life which are beyond our understanding. And those who do not accept that are not scientific, because they have conveniently left those aspects out of their pursuit of knowledge, if I may say.
Right. And that's why, Swami gave examples from even the field of medicine.
Yes.
How they approached it was so different.
Right.
Seeing that, there is a certain necessity and need for everything which is in the system. There's nothing is redundant. And there is a certain correlation between the different systems.
Right.
And that changes the way they approach medicine itself. And Swami was talking about Ayurveda and how modern medicine, you try to deal with the symptoms more than dealing with the problem itself.
Correct. And as Swami said, Ayurveda, it is to increase your Ayur, that is to increase your life, that this form of medicine came to.
Right. And then, of course, Swami spoke a little about how even for mundane degrees, BA and MA, you're ready to struggle so much.
Right.
So how can you not be willing and prepared to really struggle when it is for the highest exploration? And Swami goes on to say, there's the one who desires peace all the time can never achieve anything. That sense of adventurism, that there is that verse which Swami usually says,
Nashreyo niyamam
vina. It is self discipline. You put yourself, even if there are no difficulties, you put yourself to difficulties. And you reminded of one of our friends in the ashram. All of a sudden he just became a vegan.
Okay.
Right? Of course, Swami says that we all should be vegetarians. Became vegan. He said, it just gives you a certain amount of satisfaction if you can put a restriction on yourself and follow it.
Okay.
And he said, once in a while it's good to do such things like that. So you feel like, I'm doing something.
But that once in a while should not become like somebody who says, I've just given up smoking 3 times.
It's so easy to give up smoking. I've given it up so many times.
That's true.
Right. And of course, again, in that discourse part, Swami spoke about humility, the importance of humility.
Yes.
And how these sages... And the other thing which really struck me was, here is the Creator speaking about 2 sets of people who have explored creation.
Correct.
And he's standing up and saying, the sages have understood my creation better than the scientists.
Exactly. So he's giving them the points.
Right. He's giving them, and the force with which Swami is saying that how much they've understood, and you are calling them as fools. You're calling them as ignorant. How stupid it is. It's so heartwarming to see Swami stand up and say that they've understood my creation better than all you scientists.
Correct.
So shall we go into the first clip of that discourse?
Yes.
Right. So this is the, as we said, it's a long discourse. This is the 8th clip we're playing in that discourse.
కనుక దైవం యొక్క అనుగ్రహం ఒక కిరణం మనలో వచ్చినట్టుంటే ఎంతైనా మనం సాధించవచ్చు.
If we can get a ray of Swami's grace, how much can we achieve?
ఈ కిరణంలో ఒక్క అణుమాత్రమైన నాకు ప్రసాదించమని కోరుతూ వచ్చారు ఆనాటి మహర్షులు.
The ancient Maharshis prayed, bless us with at least one ray of grace and bless us.
దైవం యొక్క శక్తిని కించిత్ మనం సాధిస్తే అనంతమైనటువంటి దీన్ని కూడా మనం సాధించవచ్చు.
Even if we can earn grace of the Lord to a limited extent,
దైవానుగ్రహము లేకపోతే ఏమి సాధించడానికి కూడా ఎవరికి వీలు కాదు.
without grace of the Lord, nothing can be achieved by any person who's
ఎగరడానికి ఇష్టం లేకపోతే గ్రద్దైన కూడా ఒక ఇంచైనా ముందుకు పోలేదు.
even if it is a big kite, it cannot fly even an inch if it doesn't.
నడచడానికి ప్రయత్నిస్తే చీమైన కొన్ని మైళ్ళ దూరం నడిచిపోతుంది.
If only there is interest, even an ant can walk miles of distance.
ప్రయత్నము అత్యవసరము.
Effort is necessary.
యత్న ప్రయత్నములు మానవ ధర్మము, జయాపజయములు దైవాధీనం.
Making efforts is the duty of man. Success or otherwise is the will of God.
కనుక నీవు దైవాధీనం పైన నీవు అన్ని సక్సెస్. సక్సెస్ బిగెట్ సక్సెస్.
If only you earn the grace of God, you get success. Success begets success.
మనము అన్నింటినీ సాధించాలంటే అనుగ్రహాన్ని మనం సాధించాలి.
If we want to achieve everything, we have to first earn the grace of God.
విద్యార్థులారా,
Dear students,
మన వైస్ ఛాన్సలర్ ఈనాడు
our Vice
చాలా
Chancellor today,
పెద్ద క్వశ్చన్ వేశాడు.
he put a very big question.
మానవుడు ఏ విధమైనటువంటి దివ్యత్వాన్ని ఎంత చేరాలి, ఏ విధంగా అనుభవించాలి, ఏ విధంగా సాధించాలి అని. కానీ ఇది సాధించవలసినటువంటి విషయములంతా కూడాను పెద్ద ప్రశ్నే. కానీ దీనికి ఆన్సర్ కింద చెప్పాలనుకుంటే ఒక్క చిటిక మాత్రంలో ఆన్సర్ చెప్పవచ్చు.
How to attain divinity? How to achieve success in this particular direction? The question was a long one and a big one. But
మనం
the answer is
పెద్ద
very,
సాధన చెయ్యనక్కర్లేదు.
we need not do a very big sadhana as such.
గజేంద్రుడు కొన్ని వేల సంవత్సరాలంతా కూడాను ముసలితో పోరాడుతూ వచ్చాడు.
The elephant king fought with crocodile for thousands of years.
దేనితో పోరాడుతూ వచ్చాడు? తన భుజబలము చేత, తన యొక్క దేహశక్తి చేత తాను సాధించుకుంటానికి ప్రయత్నం చేశాడు.
He wanted to achieve success with his own physical prowess and power.
ఈ అహంకారంతో భుజబలము, బుద్ధిబలము, ధనబలము, మేధాబలము దీంతో మాత్రం సాధించినంత కాలం కూడాను ఏమాత్రం కూడాను విజయాన్ని సాధించలేము.
As long as man relies upon his own physical power, wealth or manpower, he can never achieve anything.
అలసిపోయాడు.
This elephant king got exhausted.
నీవే తప్పని తప్పరం బెరుగా మన్నింపందగుందీరుని రావే ఈశ్వర కావవే వరద సంరక్షించు భద్రాత్మక. ఇంక నేను ఏమాత్రము చేత కాదు, నీవు తప్ప ఇంక నాకు అన్యము లేదు అని శరణాగతి అయినప్పుడే సంరక్షింపబడ్డాడు.
Oh God, I have none else to whom I can resort to except in you. He surrendered and God responded.
అర్జునుడు కూడాను మహాయుద్ధ సమయం నందు తన యొక్క తెలివితేటలంతా ఉపయోగపెట్టి 1.5 చాప్టర్ అనగా మొదటి అధ్యాయము, 2వ అధ్యాయము, 11వ శ్లోకం వరకు కూడాను ప్రశ్నల వర్షం కురిపించుకుంటూ వచ్చాడు అర్జునుడు.
Arjuna also, relying upon his own intellect and his own powers, began putting questions to Krishna in first chapter of Bhagavad Gita.
తెలివితేటలంతా కూడా ఉపయోగించుకున్నాడు.
He exhausted all his
ఆ
intelligence.
తెలివితేటలు ఎంతవరకు? కొంతవరకే ఉన్నటువంటి సరుకే అది మాత్రం.
How long would your intelligence last? It can last only a little.
ఎంతకాలం నుంచి నువ్వు సంపాదించుకున్న ఆ సరుకు అంతా అయిపోయింది పాపం అర్జునుడికి.
He exhausted all the accumulated intelligence over a period of time.
ఇంకా ఏమాత్రం మాటలు కూడా లేవు.
He could not even utter a word.
చేతులు జోడించాడు.
He folded hands.
కరిష్యే వచనం తవా అన్నాడు. ఇంకా మీ ఆజ్ఞ ప్రకారం నేను చేస్తానన్నాడు.
He told, I will carry out your command, Lord. Give me your command.
హలో కమాన్ మన్మనా భగవద్భక్తో మధ్యాజీ మాం నమస్కురే మామే వైశేషి సత్యం తే ప్రతిజానే ప్రయోజమే. ఇప్పుడు నీవు నా భక్తుడు, ఇంకా నీవు ముందుకు పో, నేను చూసుకుంటానన్నాడు.
Now that you have said that, you are my devotee. I'll take care of you. You go ahead, proceed further.
కనుక భగవంతుడికి అర్పితం చేసినప్పుడే ఇవన్నీ సులభంగా మనకు అన్ని అర్థమవుతాయి. సులభంగా అన్నింటినీ మనం సాధించవచ్చు.
Only when you dedicate yourself to God and offer yourself entirely.
కానీ ఈనాటి సాధకులు కానీ ఈనాటి భక్తులు కానీ అర్పితానికి పోవటం లేదు.
Today's spiritual aspirants and devotees
షేర్ హోల్డర్ బిజినెస్ మాదిరి చేస్తున్నాం మనం. నాది అర్థం షేరు, నీది ఒక అర్థం షేరు, రెండింటిని చేరి మనం బిజినెస్ చేస్తాం అనుకుంటున్నారు.
You are doing business with God. One share is mine, another share is yours. We will carry on the business.
నేను చేసే పని నేను చేస్తాను, నువ్వు ఇచ్చే అనుగ్రహం నువ్వు ఇచ్చి అని ఈ రకంగా వ్యాపారం కింద మొదలు పెడతారు.
I'll do my job, you give your grace.
పార్ట్నర్షిప్ చేసుకుంటున్నారు.
They are establishing a partnership with God.
ఈ బిజినెస్ తో ఏమాత్రము చెల్లదు.
You can never achieve success with this kind of business approach.
ఈ అర్పితము,
I have offered myself to you.
అన్ని తానే చూసుకుంటాడు.
He will take care of you in all its entirety.
అనేక మంది కొడైకెనాల్లో కూడా పిల్లలు కొంత చెప్పాను. స్వామి సన్నిధిలో ఉండినంత వరకు, స్వామి సంభాషణలు వినేంత వరకు, స్వామి వాతావరణంలో ఉండినంత వరకు పిల్లల యొక్క హృదయాలు చక్కగా పవిత్రంగా చాలా ఆనందంగా ఒక విధమైనటువంటి ఉత్సాహంగా ఉంటుంటారు.
I told in Kodaikanal to the students that as long as they are with Swami, they are listening to Swami's words, they are enjoying Swami's love.
కానీ కొంత వాతావరణం బయటికి పోయిన తక్షణమే ఇదంతా మార్పు చెందుతూ ఉంటాయి.
They are all right. But the moment they go out, there is a change.
దీనికి కారణం ఏమిటి?
What is the reason for this change?
దేహము మృణ్మయమైనటువంటి దేహము.
The body is muddy and made of mud and it's precious.
ఈ మృణ్మయమైనటువంటి ఒక చిన్న ఉదాహరణ.
One small example.
మట్టి మగ్గు ఉంటుంటాది.
There is a mud mug.
ఈ మట్టి యొక్క మగ్గు లోపల నీరు ఫుల్లుగా పోసి
You have poured water.
ఎవరు టచ్ చేయకుండా ఉండేటువంటి ఒక ప్రదేశంలో పెట్టినప్పటికీ
if you keep in a place which cannot be accessible to anyone,
2 దినముల లోపల 3 ఇంచుల నీళ్లు అబ్జర్వ్ అయిపోతుంటాయి.
3 inches of water will get evaporated within 2 or 3 days.
ఆ యొక్క మట్టి పీల్చుకుంటుంది.
This mud absorbs water.
కానీ ఆ మగ్గు నిండుకు నీళ్లు పోసి ఆ మగ్గును తిరిగి నీళ్లలో మూతి వరకు నీళ్లు ఉండేటువంటి దాంట్లో పెడితే లోపల ఉన్నటువంటి నీరు ఒక్క అణుమాత్రమైన కూడా తగ్గదు.
But if you keep this mug full of water, in water itself, the water will never get evaporated even by a drop.
ఈనాటి ఏమైపోతుందంటే మన విద్యార్థులు ఒక మట్టి మగ్గు వంటి వాళ్ళు.
Our students may be compared to mud mugs.
దీంట్లో ఆధ్యాత్మికమైనటువంటి ఫుల్గా నింపినప్పటికీ
you may fill them with spirituality to the brim.
చుట్టూ ఆధ్యాత్మిక వాతావరణం లేనటువంటి ప్రదేశంలోకి పోయేటప్పటికే ఇదంతా కూడాను కొంతవరకు తగ్గిపోతుంటుండాలి.
Once they go to an environment where there is no spirituality, all the spirituality gets exhausted.
అక్కడికి పోయి కూడా మనం చుట్టూ వాతావరణాన్ని ఆధ్యాత్మికంగానే మనం కల్పించుకుంటే మనలో చేర్చుకున్నటువంటిది ఏమాత్రం కూడా తగ్గడానికి వీలుండదు.
If we can create a spiritual atmosphere around you wherever you go, spirituality in you.
కనుక ఇక్కడ సత్సంగము, అక్కడ దుస్సంగము.
Here there is good company, there is bad company.
అక్కడ కూడా సత్సంగంలో మనం చేరడానికి పోవాలి.
You should create good company even there.
ఆ సత్సంగములో చేరి సత్కర్మలు ఆచరించినప్పుడే మన యొక్క భక్తి ఏమాత్రం కూడాను మారక కదరక చెదరక కట్టుకలక ఉంటుంటాది.
When you go to any place, if you can create good company and carry on good activity, your spirituality will never disappear.
And it's so beautiful to see how seamlessly Swami is transitioned into bhakti.
Right.
Till now it was about inquiry. Swami is talking about exploration and how you have to, the best way to inquire into how the creation is and how things are around you, and how to inquire into the divine principle too.
Right.
But so effortlessly, and Swami is transitioned into the role of bhakti in all this.
Very true. In fact, the concept of being eligible or praying for God's grace, which is like a royal road for all achievement. That's such a beautiful point.
Right. And Swami starts by saying that the Vice Chancellor has asked such a complex question.
Yes.
How can divinity be visualized? The innate divinity, how can it be experienced and visualized? And Swami says, the question is very, very complex, but it can be answered in a trice. It's so simple. It's right. And Swami says the answer is you have to surrender to God.
Correct.
And when Swami speaks about surrender, just the paragraph before this, the clip which we played last time, it was all about effort. Swami said, you can't seek pleasure and try to know it. You have to put your effort. If you're sleeping, there is no point. Nobody can wake you up. You have to get up. And even the previous one, Swami said, have the confidence. So many people have achieved it. You can achieve it. Don't give it up. There was so much of emphasis on effort. And here Swami is saying that, do the effort, give it the best push you can, but never place your confidence on the effort.
Correct.
This entire part where Swami is saying that, it's not like it cannot be achieved by the powers of your body, by your intellect, by your money and so on. Can never be won through this. It can only be won by, do all this to the best of the thing and then surrender it to Him, and then it will be achieved.
Yeah, the power of surrender is so beautiful. We have, I think, spoken about it couple of times in this show, when Swami says true surrender is when you accept everything, this is for my good. But in another I think context, Swami had said that true surrender never takes into cognizance the presence or absence of sorrow, suffering and the like. Not take in cognizance the presence or absence. That's total acceptance. So you're really not worried or affected by what's happening to you.
Right.
It's all good for you.
I don't recollect exactly. It's just some few days back I had heard this in one of the talks where Swami was asked this question, that Swami, if there is suffering, karma can never be overrun.
Okay.
How does surrender help? Swami has said that surrender helps. And Swami explains that when you speak about these two things, you speak of suffering and surrender. Swami said they don't exist together.
Okay.
Swami said those who have surrendered never ever think that they are suffering.
They are suffering. That's true.
And there's such a beautiful point. Swami says that be it Mirabai, be it Tukaram or Tyagaraja, when they were in that mood of surrender, even Radha for that matter.
Yes.
When they're in that mood of surrender, it's the people around them who thought that they were suffering. They never felt it was pain. Because if you're feeling the pain, you've not surrendered.
You have not surrendered.
We are thinking that the moment I feel the pain, let me start surrendering and get over the pain. It's not like that. I think it's such a spontaneous thing where there is surrender, there is the pain is never felt.
Very beautiful. Very beautiful. And that beautiful shloka which Swami said, and the way Arjuna said, Karishe Vajnam Tava.
Come on.
Then Swami says, good, come on, now I'll teach you.
Right. I think in many ways, this is what happens to all of us.
Right.
When you come to Swami, you kind of get an opportunity to empty all your incomplete philosophies at his feet. And as Swami says, once you're empty, now you're ready to accept it.
Very true.
And then, of course, this point about the way Swami beautifully as we said, from effort, Swami went on to giving up confidence in your own effort or surrendering your effort. And then Swami goes on to the role of devotion when you surrender to God.
Correct.
And now Swami is saying what is required. Now you've surrendered to God, now you're filled with such feelings. The importance of satsangam. Even in that situation, even when you've got the grace, to retain that grace, how good company is so essential. This beautiful analogy which Swami gives.
About the water in a...
Right, water in a mud pot.
Mud pot, right.
Right. Swami says that when you put water in a mud pot, due to evaporation and seeping, some of that water is lost. But if you place that pot with water in another trough with water, then the water remains in the pot. Swami says similarly, when you've collected all this, good words and wisdom and knowledge and everything, when you go out, ensure that you are in good company so that this water is inside. It doesn't get lost.
Very true. In fact, before that point, Swami gives that beautiful point about the shareholders.
Right.
He says dedication to the Lord is the easiest way to fulfill your life. It's like we think that God is unfair as far as a business deal is concerned. But actually, he's a very poor businessman. To put it in that sense, he gives us much more. He says, you take only one step. All he's asking is, you take one step. I'm here to take 100 steps towards you. And so he says, dedication to the Lord is the easiest way to fulfill your life. it's not that you're getting anything less for what you're doing.
Right, and it's such a beautiful point which Swami is saying that, when you talk about being shareholders, I think all of us would have gone through that phase. Swami, I prayed to you.
Correct.
I made the effort and I did it, but you did not respond. So it's typically that attitude, I mean, where you have a business partnership, you say that, okay, I'll be a working partner, you be an investing partner. And then you feel that, I've done my part, you've not done your part.
Right.
And Swami says it's got, you can't deal with God like that. You, even in that shloka from Bhagavad Gita, which Swami refers to, he says, once you surrender to me, finished. I mean, you don't have to do anything. I'm going to be taking care of you all through.
Right.
Like what Krishna says, tells Arjuna.
Yeah, I mean, in that shloka also there is a very beautiful, if you read the translation, it says, fix your mind on me, be devoted to me, sacrifice to me, bow to me, I promise that you shall come to me. And that's the assurance. Know this truth, for you are dear to me.
Right.
And this word sacrifice is very beautiful, because what do we have to sacrifice when we have surrendered to Him? What do we have to sacrifice? See, in a sense, sacrifice is the part which we have to do. Like surrender comes as a fruition of your sacrifice. So what is it that you have to sacrifice? And Swami has told it in many places. It's not the family, or it's not all this that you have to sacrifice. What you have to sacrifice is the body consciousness. And the feeling that I am separate from God. He says that is what you have to sacrifice. And he says sacrifice your selfishness, sacrifice your animal nature, and sacrifice the fruits of action. So what is it that you have to sacrifice in order to surrender completely to the Lord?
All right. And that whole process which Swami is mentioning, you do the best you can. Yes, somebody said, do your best and God will do the rest. It's like we are in a different mode now. Let me rest and let God do the best.
Let God do the best.
Right. I think that one thing, many commentators, especially Western commentators, speak of that as a very beautiful point which Bhagavad Gita stresses. You do with complete involvement.
Yes.
There is no detachment when you're doing.
Okay.
The detachment comes only when there is expectation, or when the results section starts coming. I mean, because detachment in action becomes indifference.
Very true.
If that one quality alone we can cultivate,
I think that one thing is enough, isn't it?
It's enough. If you're able to do without expectation.
If you are conscious of it in every action of yours, from the time you wake up in the morning till the time you go to bed, that itself is something.
Right. It is a quality of oneness itself. Let's say that tomorrow suddenly your right hand gets paralyzed. We never think, I fed you all these years. How dare you, fail me now?
Right.
I mean, that thought never comes.
Correct.
Because we believe that it's part of the body. I mean, it's not your mistake. I mean, I never expected anything from you. I think when we are able to relate to God like that, I think that's really this stage of stepping into that oneness.
Very true.
Right. So I think we'll go to the last clip in that discourse.
Okay.
And maybe after that, if we have time, we'll quickly go through the rest of the discourse too.
Sure.
కేవలం నోటితో మంత్రాన్ని చెప్పినంత మాత్రమే చాలదు.
By merely chanting mantras, there is no use.
భగవంతుని నామాన్ని ఉచ్చరించినంత మాత్రమే చాలదు.
By merely chanting the name of the Lord,
భగవత్ కర్మల యందు మనం ప్రవేశించాలి.
participate in the actions associated with God.
మీకు అనేక పర్యాయాలు చెప్పాను.
I have told you a number of times.
హనుమంతుడు
Hanuman
విభీషణ ఫ్రెండ్షిప్ ఏర్పరచుకున్నాడు.
made friendship with Vibhishana.
కానీ ఒక సంభాషణ లోపల విభీషణుడు చాలా బాధపడుతున్నాడు.
When they were carrying on some dialogue, Vibhishana expressed his...
నీవెంత అదృష్టవంతుడు పోయి నిరంతరము రామసేవ యందు నీవు నిమగ్నులైపోతున్నావు, రామానుగ్రహం నీవు పొందుతున్నావు. నేను ఎంతకాలం నుంచి నువ్వు రామనామాన్ని స్మరిస్తున్నాను, కానీ రామ దర్శనం కూడా నాకు ప్రాప్తించడం లేదన్నాడు.
Vibhishana said, how fortunate are you, Hanuman? You have the opportunity to serve Lord and you have the grace of the Lord. I have been chanting his name for a long time, but I did not even have his darshan.
చక్కని ప్రశ్న వేశాడు హనుమంతుడు.
Hanuman put a beautiful question back to
విభీషణ, రామనామాన్ని స్మరిస్తున్నావే మాత్రమే కానీ రామకార్యములు ఏమైనా పాల్గొంటున్నావా?
Vibhishana, You are merely chanting the name of Rama. But are you participating in Rama's work?
రామకార్యములో పాల్గొనకుండా పోయినప్పుడు రామానుగ్రహం నీకు ఎట్లా లభిస్తుంది?
Without participating in Rama's work, how
10
to
నెలలు
earn
అయిపోయింది
Rama's grace?
సీతాదేవి వచ్చి లంకలో ప్రవేశించి.
It is almost 10 days Sita has entered Lanka.
ఆ సీత సహాయం రామసేవ కాదా?
Serving Sita, would it not be?
సీతకి ఏమైనా కొంతవరకు నేను ఉపశాంతి ఏమైనా నువ్వు బోధించావా?
Have you been able to console her?
లేక సీతనైనా ఒకతూరైనా నీవు దర్శించావా?
Have you taken at least a look?
ఆమె బాధలు నివారించడానికి ఏమైనా కొన్ని ఉపాయములు చేశావా?
Have you made any efforts to reduce her?
ఇంకా నీకు రామానుగ్రహం ఎట్ట కలుగుతుంది?
How can you earn grace of Rama?
కనుకనే నా జీవితం అంతా కూడా రామనామం అనేటువంటిది రోమ రోమం ఉండినప్పటికీ రామకార్యంలోనే నా జీవితం అంకితం చేశాను.
Every hair on my body repeats the name of Rama. In spite of that, I participate in Rama's work continuously.
కనుకనే మనం చేయవలసింది ఏమిటి? దిల్ మే రామ్ హాత్ మే కామ్. ఈ రెండింటి యందు మనం జీవితాన్ని అంకితం చేయాలి.
What we have to do is keep Ram in our heart and keep work in our hand. Carry on.
ఇది
these two.
ఆనాడు చేసినటువంటి మహర్షుల యొక్క సాధన.
This is what the Maharshis achieved in those
ఆనాటి
ages.
పరిశోధనలు కూడా ఈ విధమైనటువంటి యొక్క పవిత్రమైన పరిశోధనలు చేస్తూ వచ్చారు.
Even the research was carried on these right lines in those ancient days.
కనుక మానవుడు సామాన్యుడు కాదు.
Man is not an ordinary being.
జంతువునాం నరజన్మ దుర్లభము. మానవ జన్మం చాలా దుర్లభమైనటువంటిది.
It is very rare to get human birth.
అలాంటి మానవత్వాన్ని మనం సార్థకం గావించుకోవాలనుకుంటే సాధ్యమైనంత వరకు నువ్వు దైవ చింతనలో మనము దైవాన్వేషణలో మనము ప్రవేశించాలి.
If you want to sanctify such a sacred birth, you have to repeat the name of the Lord and undertake His work.
విద్యార్థులారా,
Dear students,
ఈనాటి నుండి తిరిగి మరికొన్ని మార్పులు కూడా చేయాలని సంకల్పించుకున్నాను.
from today onwards, I have decided to make some changes also.
పిల్లలు అధికం కావటం చేత
The number of students has increased.
తెల్లవారి స్నానాలు చేసి స్వామి దర్శనానికి రావాలనుకుంటే 2 గంటలకే పాపం పిల్లలు చేస్తున్నారు.
Students are getting up as early as 2 o'clock to have bath because of large numbers.
2 గంటల నుంచి కూడా ప్రారంభమయ్యి 8 గంటలు అయ్యేటప్పటికి పిల్లల స్నానాలంతా పూర్తి అవుతుంటాయి.
When they start their bath by 2 o'clock, they have been able to finish only by 8 o'clock.
కనుక మధ్యాహ్నం యొక్క క్లాసెస్ అంతా కూడా చాలా డల్ గా ఉంటుంది పాపం.
That is why afternoon classes will be dull.
రేపటి నుంచి కూడా మధ్యాహ్నం క్లాసెస్ మానివేస్తాం.
From this afternoon, tomorrow afternoon onwards, afternoon classes will be suspended.
సాయంకాలము ఈ యొక్క సమావేశంలో ప్రవేశించేటప్పటికి మంచి ఫ్రెష్ గా ఉంటుంటుంది మైండ్.
When you enter the assembly in the evening, you will be fresh.
కనుక రేపు తెల్లవారి మాత్రమే 3 క్లాసెస్ పెట్టుకొని 11:30కంతా ముగించుకొని మధ్యాహ్నం చక్కగా విశ్రాంతి తీసుకోండి. విన్నటువంటి విషయాలు మననం చేయండి. తర్వాత 4 గంటలకి ఇక్కడికి వచ్చేప్పటికి ఫ్రెష్ గా రావచ్చు. కానీ కొంతమంది పిల్లలంతా కూడాను ఇప్పుడు ఫ్రెష్ గా లేదు. ఎంత స్వామి మంచి విషయాలు చెప్తున్నా కానీ మధ్య మధ్య తూగుతూ ఉంటున్నారు. ఇలాంటి పరిస్థితులు ఎంత విలువైనటువంటి అందించినప్పటికీ అది ప్రయోజనం ఉండదు.
Tomorrow onwards, there will be classes only till 11:30.
వైస్ ఛాన్సలర్ ఈ కార్యక్రమాల్లో కొంచెం మార్పు చేసి రేపటి దినము 2 క్లాసులు తెల్లవారి మాత్రం 3 క్లాసులు పెట్టుకొని మధ్యాహ్నం 11:30 నుంచి కూడా ఫ్రీగా పిల్లల్ని విడిచిపెట్టాలి.
Let Vice Chancellor make the necessary changes in the program and have classes 2 or 3, but finish them.
అయితే ఆ కాలాన్ని మీరు వ్యర్థం చేయకూడదు.
But you should not waste the remaining time.
తెల్లవారి
either.
విన్నటువంటి విషయాలు చక్కగా రాసుకొని నోట్స్ మీరు చదువుకోవటము లేకపోతే కొంత విశ్రమించుకోవటము ఇవి 2 చేసుకోవాలి. కానీ అనవసరమైన మాటలకు మాత్రం చోటు ఇవ్వకూడదు.
You should use that time in ruminating and reflecting on what you have heard in the morning or taking rest. You should not indulge
మానవుడు
in unnecessary
దైవత్వాన్ని
talk.
ఏ రీతిగా చేరగలడు అనేటువంటి విషయాన్ని రేపటి నుంచి కూడాను మీ వైస్ ఛాన్సలర్ ఇష్ట ప్రకారం నేను ప్రారంభిస్తాను.
I am going to start according to the prayers of your Vice Chancellor as to how to attain God.
ఇది చాలా
From tomorrow on.
అవసరము.
It is very necessary.
మానవుడై పుట్టినందుకు ఈ మాధవత్వాన్ని గుర్తించుకోవటము చాలా ప్రధానమైనటువంటి యొక్క సమస్య.
After being born as a man, it is his duty to realize divinity.
ఎక్కడెక్కడ ఏ దేశంలో జరుగుతున్నటువంటి వార్తలంతా మనం వింటున్నాం.
We are hearing the events taking place in the form of news from various places of the
కానీ
world.
తన యందు వచ్చేటువంటి వార్తను మనము తను తాను గుర్తించుకోవటలేకపోతున్నాడు.
But we are not caring to take note of the news within.
కనుక బయట నుంచి వచ్చేటువంటి న్యూస్ కంటే మన వచ్చేటువంటి న్యూసెన్స్ చాలా అధికంగా ఉంటుండాలి.
The nuisance coming from within us is much more than the news that is coming from the
ఆ
outside
న్యూస్ ను
world.
మనం దూరం చేస్తే ఈ న్యూసెన్స్ అంతా దూరం అయిపోతుంది.
You give up the news of the world, your inner nuisance will also disappear.
దాని యొక్క పవిత్రమైనటువంటి యొక్క దైవత్వాన్ని మనం నింపుకోవచ్చును.
Fill yourself with the divinity.
కనుక రేపటి నుంచి మీరంతా చక్కగా ఫ్రెష్ మంచి హృదయములై నిర్మలమైనటువంటి హృదయంతో ఈ ప్రవేశంలో ఈ యొక్క సమావేశంలో మీరు పాల్గొన్నప్పుడు చాలా విలువైనటువంటి విషయాలంతా మీరు అందుకోవాల్సి వస్తుంది. హృదయాన్ని చక్కగా ఆ పాత్రను మీరు పరిశుద్ధంగా గావించుకుని రండి.
From tomorrow onwards, in the evening function, you come fresh, keep your hearts pure, most sacred and very important things will be told, and you will have to preserve them
ఏ
in your
శాస్త్రమునందు
heart.
కానీ ఏ ఉపనిషత్తులు ఎందు కానీ ఏ వేదమునందు కానీ లేనటువంటివి కాదు, అన్ని వేదము యొక్క స్వరూపాలే.
Whatever is being told is found in Vedas.
అయితే దాన్ని విపులంగా చేసి వివరించేటువంటి వ్యక్తులు లేకపోవడం చేతనే అది మీకు అర్థం కాకపోతున్నాయి.
But there are no people who can explain them properly in simple way. Therefore, you are finding all those
వాటిని
things
నేను
very difficult.
సులభంగా మీ స్థాయికి తగినట్టుగా అనుకూలవంతంగా ఆదర్శంగా ఒక సాధనకు అనుకూలమైన రీతిగా నేను తప్పక చెప్పి మీ హృదయాలను చక్కగా పవిత్రంగా గావించాలని నేను సంకల్పించుకుంటున్నాను. రేపటి నుంచి మాత్రము మధ్యాహ్నం క్లాసెస్ ఉండవు.
I will simplify all those great truths and make them easily understandable by you and present them in such a way that you will enjoy them. From tomorrow onwards, there will be no afternoon classes.
That, dear listeners, was advertisement for the next episode of Shravanam Mananam Nidhidhyasanam, because Swami is so beautifully saying that these are all complex things, but I shall explain it to you in a manner which is, in your level of understanding, with lucidity and in a manner that it's palatable to you.
So sweet and so beautiful. I mean, you feel like asking Swami, what more will you do for us? The way Swami started off this clip is also very beautiful. Of course, this theme Swami has mentioned earlier also. But in this context, it really is very beautiful, because looking at this discourse, Swami started off with how people were looking at nature and then trying to know and trying to understand God. But then he slowly shifted to what we must do actually.
Right.
And what we should actually do. What is our effort? What we should do. I mean, yes, you know that God is there. You know that God has done all this. Then what is it that we should do? Then the culmination of what we should do is, as Swami said, Dil mein Ram, Haath mein Kaam.
Right. This part when Swami was speaking, I was reminded of that. I think it's a very famous little story, they say. And there's this man who is walking past a road, and he sees this young girl, probably 5-year-old or something, and she's in the cold, she's hungry, and he's so disturbed seeing that sight. He goes back home and he says, God, why is it like that? Why nobody is taking care of the child? Why have you not done anything for her? Why have you let that child in the cold and hungry like that? You've not done anything for her. So he has a dream in which God comes and tells, but I have done. So then he says, no, but I saw her alone. And then God tells him, I have created you.
I created you. That's right.
When you look at that story and this part where Swami is saying, how many times in a day we say that, Swami, why have you not done? Why people are suffering like this? Why people... If we consider that as God's work, Swami is saying that you going and doing that is actually participating in God's work.
God's work.
You don't have to wait till somebody an avatar like Rama comes and builds a bridge so you can be a part of it.
Correct.
And each of this, what we think is God's work, because if you look at it, when you talk about sages, you talk about their contribution as explorers in the initial years. One of the qualities of those sages was, service to society.
Correct.
All of them will be in the field of education, in the field of medicine. When Swami spoke about Ayurveda, because all of them were actually dispensing medicine for free, I'm sure.
Correct.
They were doing that service to society, and there was no distinction between humans and animals. They would go and protect everybody.
Correct.
And that quality of that class itself, it is said that once you become a sannyasi, or if you're a Brahmin in the true sense, you don't hoard. Whatever you collect, you finish it for that day, or you distribute it.
Correct.
So that automatically makes you a person who cannot save. So you're not dependent on the society to keep some kind of a cache of wealth. So all of this, where Swami is saying that it started off with exploration, how you have to explore, then speaks about humility, then he speaks about attitude of surrender.
Correct.
And now Swami is saying that you have to do God's work.
You have to do his work.
And this is what is God's work in a sense.
And he says, this was the sadhana that the sages took up. Their investigations were of pure intent also. I mean, the intent, the motivation with which you do an action is as important as doing it. The intention with which you do it. So that attitude of humility and that attitude of surrender, when they do the work, he said, success begets success. It's bound to get success. In fact, he was saying, once you earn God's grace, that anugraha, which is a divine attribute, is a part of those 16 attributes of the divine.
Right.
That anugraha, if you earn, he says automatically things will come to you.
Right. And of course, then comes this very, very sweet part where Swami is probably, quite understandable. If I was in the audience, I can imagine what Swami described. Really now looking back, how many such priceless discourses we missed.
Right.
And I don't know how many of those discourses were missed sitting there and looking at Swami and saying, "Oh, Swami, you're looking so beautiful."
That's also true.
Right. Even that is also there. But I think all of it adds up. The very fact that we're sitting here and looking at these discourses is the love that Swami instilled in all of us in those years. But you can really relate to this when Swami is saying that 2 a.m., 8 a.m., because I remember when we had the summer course, I think you also would have been a student in 2000 when we had a summer course.
Right.
Because suddenly the hostel's capacity gets doubled, a little more than doubled.
Correct.
So then if you're used to getting up at 5 and having bath, you'll have to start getting up at 2 and 3.
Yes.
And they would have batches. You'll go finish your bath, come back and sleep.
Sleep again.
And somebody will come and wake you up for breakfast. And so thoughtful of Swami to say that this is there, so let's not have classes in the afternoon.
The purpose of not having classes in the afternoon is very beautifully brought out in that one statement where he says, priceless advice is thus wasted on inattentive ears.
Right.
What is sleep compared to what you're actually missing?
Right.
Is because of a small thing like sleep, you're missing such precious advice.
Right.
It's just going off.
Probably Swami would have thought those 3 afternoon classes where some scholar comes and speaks to you and you lose your sleep, you might as well sleep and come and listen to me.
That's true. Going further, how Swami says, the most compelling goal of man is to reach divinity. Here is Swami himself, who is ready to take the essence of all the Shastras, all the Vedas, and then give it to you in such a simple and lucid way so that you can achieve that purpose of life.
Right. Then Swami says, we often say this, the youngsters are not focused these days. They're very frivolous in their attitude and all that. Swami says that the problem is there is nobody who can give these beautiful messages in a manner they can relate to, in the manner they can understand to. And more than anything else, I think the need to listen to some of these messages from a person of worth. There are a lot of people who can intellectualize this kind of concepts and speak it out. But when Swami stands there and speaks, you cannot deny that here is a person who has the authority to speak that, because he lives each one of these things which he speaks about.
Comes back to that, my life is my message.
Right.
A few of these topics like humility, few of these topics, here is somebody who is all-knowing, who's all-powerful, and then he comes down. Isn't this also, an attribute of humility, where he's ready to come down to our level and then lift us up?
Right.
And he's not sitting on a high chair and saying, you people rise up to my level. With so much of love, he comes down. In all this, discourse is really phenomenal, as we said. And he started off with this beautiful padyam, where he says the creator shines within the universe and the universe is reflected in the creator. God and creation are eternally bound as friends. The words of Sai convey the truth. And this poem, as I'm just reading it, realize that it summarizes the entire discourse. The attitude with which you should look on the Lord, Sakyam Atmanivedanam, friendship. So that divine friendship, God is your only true friend. When Swami says Sakyam Atmanivedanam, surrender. And when you surrender, then that's all you need to do.
Right. And, as you're saying, positioning this poem with relation to what Swami said about partnership and shareholders. In friendship, there's nothing like that. In the friendship, you don't expect return favors when you do for your friends. Swami is almost saying, creation and God are like friends. The moment you understand this relationship itself, I think it's
very beautiful. I think we should just quickly go through the points that Swami brought out in this entire discourse.
Right.
He started with saying that 5 elements are all pervasive and they're there. But when you come to human being, when you come to man, he says the first thing that assails a human birth is hunger. So he says the first thing that you need after you're born is food. You need, and he says no matter how many machines or computers you have invented, they cannot give you food.
Right.
And water.
Right. And Swami says that that's how the exploration begins.
Right.
What are those things which man is completely dependent on nature for?
Correct.
And as you said, water, food, and fire. Those were the elements which he did not understand in the beginning. And all of this study was happening within the sphere he knew.
Right.
Swami says, the whole world became his laboratory in that sense.
Correct.
Trying to explore around, feel around. And initially started by believing that this is all is the world.
Right.
Right. There was no idea of something beyond this.
And then he evolved to, agriculture, and beyond agriculture, obviously, how the Pratyaksha Devam, that's the sun god. So when he looked up at sun and he worshipped the sun and realized that, yes, he's a visible God for us every day.
Right.
And then this beautiful topic of numbers. Swami says, man looked at God and realized that God was one who became many.
Right.
So through that, he said, you may take any big number, but it's all addition of 1, 1, 1, 1, and that one is God.
Right. And of course, after that, Swami goes on to explain man's slow understanding and expansion of that understanding about God.
Right.
And how along that journey, he starts giving names to God.
Yes.
And as we mentioned earlier, we drew that point where Swami is till now not started speaking about the form aspect at all.
Exactly.
It is only about that in that concept of God. And Swami starts giving the different names of Aditya, Vishnu. It is believed that he's at all places at all times.
All
so that inspires the name Vishnu. And then there is this feeling that he's not limited, he's not perishable.
Yes.
So that name Hiranyagarbha is given. Then Ishvara.
Yes.
Because he is inexhaustible.
Right.
So he is given the name Ishvara. Then he is beyond the gunas, so given the name Shiva. Then he can manifest himself in any form whenever he decides. So he is given the Sambhava is given. And then
Isha.
Right.
Because he is the embodiment of all the
6 kinds of prosperity.
6 types of prosperity. That's right.
And then Swami says, then finally man starts becoming wise, and he starts giving the name Aprameya, that he is beyond my understanding.
He is beyond my understanding. I mean,
right.
that's the last name that Swami brings out. He says Aprameya is what man reaches, but he says then what has to be done? He says at the peak of human intellect, you have to start understanding that man is actually divine. And that's where Swami goes on to say the sages actually realized that we all are sparks of the same divine power.
Right.
And they say we have experienced him. We have gone, we have inquired, we have discovered, we have experienced him. Uttishtata, Jagrata, they speak to the entire...
Because at this point, after saying Aprameya, that he cannot be understood.
Right.
Swami says that, yes, he cannot be understood by human intelligence,
right.
But you understand that you're not limited by human intelligence.
Exactly.
That was proven by these sages, because there are these humans who, were born as humans, lived as humans, but they pushed their limits and they, came to that understanding which is beyond the human intellect, giving us the idea that you can go beyond the human intellect itself.
That's a very beautiful point, because when Swami says this is the peak of human intellect, it is really the peak of human intellect, because
right.
You have to go beyond the intellect. That is where intellect ends. Probably that's where the experiential part takes over. And the sages say, yes, there is something beyond.
Right.
There is something beyond what you think you can comprehend. And that is God. And then he says, Shraddha.
The flow of that part is, Swami says that first of all, believe that it can be done.
Right.
Don't give up hope.
Yes.
Then do it now. Don't wait till a later date. Get up and do it now.
Correct.
And Swami gives that what can be done, what should be done to achieve that. Swami says, give up tamas.
Tamas.
Give up tamas can be summarized in the idea that go beyond your animal nature.
Right.
Swami says, give up tamas. Then let go of rajas. Because, when you can manipulate the things around you, when you have the intelligence to extract comforts from the elements around you,
yes,
you kind of get into that rut. Desires start increasing and you start becoming more bound to your desires. Swami says, so get beyond that stage also, that is beyond rajas. And then use sattva as a tool. And through humility, shraddha and devotion, you can achieve it.
Very beautiful. And then,
of course, Swami doesn't say you can achieve it. Swami says then God reveals himself to you.
yes, God reveals him. Then he asks this fundamental question, where is God?
Right.
And this beautiful shloka of Brahmarpanam and Aham Vaishvana Robhutva, he says, God is within us. That you should not doubt. So he says, do not doubt. God is within you. The fact that God is within you, do not doubt. This sentence is also very beautiful. He says, okay, when would you actually know that you have realized? So the day you have no difference between I, you and he, as
Right.
Swami says it.
In fact, Swami speaks about scientific understanding here. Swami says that scientists say that there is nothing like day and night.
Right.
Because the sun never rises or so on, it's the earth which rotates. And Swami says, but still you live your life according to that day and night.
You say good morning.
Right, good morning, you say. Swami says, it is right, it is not wrong. So you acknowledge that. You say that till the difference goes, you are bound by the differences which are seen.
Yes, that's right.
Right.
So he says, having known that this is not the ultimate, you have to live in it.
Right.
You have to live in it.
As long as we are subservient to nature, living a worldly life, we must obey its laws and live by its standards.
That's
Swami
true.
says.
Then again he says, yes, you know that there are limitations, but there are things which are really beyond your control. And the sages were humble enough and they accepted that it's God's will that determines birth and death, for example.
Right.
He says it's absolutely not in anybody's hand. And that in a simple example, Swami says, do you control your heartbeat? Do you control your breath?
Right.
You can't.
Right. And then Swami says that, how keen they were in understanding the human body. There's that part where Swami says how they realized that life was not in the breath, life was not in the heartbeat, life was not in the head or anything,
Yes.
but in that lightning flash, right? And Swami quotes that Narayan Suktam verse where he says that he lives as that streak of light.
Neelato yadamadhyastha vidyule keva bhaskara.
Right. Swami says, the spinal cord, one particular position, Swami says.
Yes.
And then Swami goes on to say, how did they understand this? And, these are these people who have, without any instruments.
Correct.
Swami at the later part speaks about doctors. He say you have all your instruments to tell you, if you want to find out somebody's health, you have 10 instruments to find out.
Yeah.
Then you travel all around the world, attend all kinds of conferences. and then Swami says, at the cost of so many lives.
Right.
So he said, at the cost of so many lives, you learn your, incomplete medicine.
But it's really striking, isn't it?
Right.
And he says the sages did not spend a single penny.
And then they had no instruments. They had no, yantras.
It is just the attitude and that surrender and worship. And with God's grace, they could.
Right.
And he says, Ayurveda, he says, is that beautiful branch of medicine which our sages discovered. But then we want quick results.
Right.
We want quick results. And he said, antibiotics, you get quick results and it relapses as well, as quickly as it's gone.
Right.
And it all comes down to purity at the end of this. He says, the approach, the attitude of purity, when your pursuit is pure, then you are eligible for
Right.
God's grace.
I think, and this is a thing, very seamlessly it again goes on to this next part where Swami says that be prepared to work hard, be prepared
Exactly.
to, take on some difficulties.
Right.
That understanding, many times, even in our own life, we'll see, there's a situation comes we spend all the time in trying to get out of the situation rather than understanding, what is the situation trying to teach us about our nature, about our understanding. Anywhere, even in our jobs, we have a problem, we get into a situation. We're all the time thinking that, I am in trouble. Let me get out of this. Let me leave this job. Let me go to a different team or whatever it is. But we are not realizing what is that inherent problem which has put us in that situation.
Correct.
So Swami is saying that, from Ayurveda, the way Swami goes on to this topic of, be ready to take on troubles. One who is always desirous of peace does not get anywhere.
Correct.
Ayurveda is all about that. Don't go for quick fix solutions.
Correct.
Be ready to take the longer route. Understand what is the real problem and then solve it.
Yes. Then again, of course, Swami comes to the attitude with which you go about doing this is one with a lot of humility and surrender. That's how Swami comes to the end of this discourse.
And then, of course, the part which we spoke about today, how, as we said, seamlessly Swami transitions into bhakti.
Humility, bhakti.
Right. From humility, bhakti to surrender.
Sacrifice. Surrender
to doing God's work.
Right.
It is not giving up action. Surrender never means inaction. Surrender means, becoming a part of God's work. Swami says, giving the example of Hanuman and Vibhishana.
Yes.
Right. And then, of course, the beautiful part of Swami saying that this is all important. Of course, this was said 93, that's 23 years ago, right?
Yeah.
23 years ago. But even today, when we listen to those words, Swami is saying these are important things. Keep your minds fresh. Listen to this. And even as we were discussing today, Sai Prakash, I was wondering, the one word we have used the maximum number of times for this discourse is beautiful.
That's true.
For every clip we have said, this part is beautiful, that part is beautiful. And really, indeed, this is such a beautiful discourse.
Just to give it a topping, Professor Venkatraman, who is a scientist and who has written this book, Conversations Between God and Man and Krishna, he summarizes what Krishna says, and in this context, it's also apt. What should we do when we ask the question, what are we to do? So he says, here is a 3-point formula.
Okay,
3-point formula, like a scientist can actually say. He says, always think of me. Point 1. First point is always think of me. Whatever work you do, whatever work you're doing, whatever it may be, think it is my work. Think it is my work. And third point is dedicate it, lovingly dedicate it to me. So that's the secret of action. The secret of action is always think of me and think that every work that you're doing is my work and dedicate that work to me without expecting the results.
Right. And how much more easy it is given that we know Swami, and how much more easy it is when you have lived with an avatar, when you're living with the consciousness of the Lord overlooking your life.
Very true.
Really. And with that thought, dear listeners, we'll bring this program to a close. Join you again, as Swami said. I'm going to make it even more beautiful, even more lucid. Very important truths are going to be revealed in a very lucid way. That's what Swami said in the end of that discourse. So do join us next week, same time, for the next episode of Shravanam Mananam Nidhidhyasanam. We most humbly offer this effort of ours at Swami's lotus feet. Thank you for being with us. Jai Sai Ram.